What you're about to hear is one of the most significant single operational updates to come out of the Middle East conflict in weeks, and it's moving fast. Iran has announced the launch of Wave 92 of what it calls Operation True Promise 4. That's not a typo. Wave 92. This conflict has been running at an intensity that most Western audiences have simply not been following closely enough, and today's developments may be the moment that changes that. In this video, we're going to walk through every confirmed and claimed element of this latest wave, what was targeted, what weapons were used, what the strategic logic appears to be, and what questions still remain unanswered. Let's get into it. Before we get into the specifics of Wave 92, it helps to understand what Operation True Promise 4 actually is, because the name matters. Iran has used the True Promise framing for its most significant retaliatory and offensive operations against Israel and U.S. forces in the region. Each iteration has generally been larger, more coordinated, and more geographically expansive than the last. The fact that we are now at Wave 92 of the fourth iteration tells you something important. This is not a series of sporadic, reactive strikes. This is a sustained, structured campaign with what appears to be deliberate sequencing and targeting logic built in over time. Wave 92 appears to follow that pattern, and then some. Because what makes this particular wave stand out is the sheer geographic spread of the targets claimed. We're talking about northern Israel, central Israel, Kuwait, and Bahrain, all in a single coordinated operational announcement. That's 4 distinct target areas across multiple countries in a single wave. Whether all of these strikes were fully successful is a separate question, but the ambition of the targeting picture alone is worth paying close attention to. The headline strike in Wave 92 is the claimed hit on Ramat David Airbase, located near Haifa in northern Israel. Now, if you're not familiar with Ramat David, here's why it matters. This is not a secondary or peripheral installation. Ramat David is one of Israel's most significant Air Force bases, and it sits in the Jezreel Valley, a strategically important location in the country's north. The base is home to Israeli Air Force fighter squadrons and has historically hosted F-16 operations critical to Israel's northern air campaign capabilities, including operations in Lebanon and Syria. According to the IRGC's announcement, 2 ballistic missiles struck the base directly. Now we have to be clear here. As of the time this script was written, there has been no independent verification of the extent of damage at Ramat David. Iran has a pattern of making strike claims that are sometimes confirmed, sometimes partially confirmed, and occasionally overstated. So we're not going to present this as a confirmed destruction of the base. What we can say is this: if even partial damage to active aircraft, hangars, runways, or fuel and munitions infrastructure is confirmed, this would represent a genuinely significant development. Ramat David plays a real role in Israel's northern operational posture. Degrading it, even temporarily, has real consequences for sortie generation, maintenance cycles, and the ability to sustain air operations over Lebanon and beyond. The strike also carries symbolic weight. Haifa is one of Israel's major cities. Hitting a military installation in that area sends a message to the Israeli public and military leadership that no part of the country's territory is outside the range of Iranian ballistic missiles, a point the IRGC has been making with increasing credibility over successive waves of this operation. One of the most operationally significant details in the Wave 92 announcement is the claimed use of Khorramshahr-4 ballistic missiles equipped with cluster warheads, targeting over 50 locations in and around Tel Aviv. Let's unpack both of those elements. The Khorramshahr-4, sometimes referred to by Iran as the Khaber missile, is a medium-range ballistic missile with an estimated range of around 2,000 kilometers and a large payload capacity. It's one of the more capable missiles in Iran's publicly acknowledged arsenal, and its use has been reported in previous waves of this operation. The cluster warhead element, however, is the detail that will attract the most attention from analysts and human rights observers alike. Cluster munitions work by releasing large numbers of smaller submunitions, bomblets, over a wide area. The intention is to maximize the coverage zone of a single missile, hitting dispersed targets or creating broad area effects that a single unitary warhead could not achieve. The use of cluster munitions in or near populated urban areas like Tel Aviv raises serious humanitarian questions that are entirely separate from the military analysis, and those questions deserve to be acknowledged clearly, not brushed past. From a purely military analytical standpoint, the claim of targeting over 50 locations with cluster warhead missiles suggests Iran is attempting to saturate Israeli air defenses by forcing interception decisions across a very wide target set simultaneously, while also seeking to create dispersed effects on the ground even if some missiles are intercepted. Again, independent verification of the outcomes of these strikes in Tel Aviv is pending, but the claimed methodology here is strategically coherent and worth understanding on its own terms. Moving away from Israel, Wave 92 also included a claimed strike on a distinctly different category of target: U.S. amphibious landing craft utility vessels at Kuwait's al-Shuwaikh port. This is significant for a couple of reasons. First, it represents a direct claim of targeting U.S. military assets, not Israeli, not partner nation, but American naval vessels in a third country. That's an escalatory step in the targeting logic, regardless of the outcome. Second, the choice of amphibious landing craft is interesting from a strategic perspective. These vessels are part of the U.S. military's power projection toolkit, used for moving Marines, vehicles, and equipment from ship to shore. They're not frontline combat vessels in the traditional sense, but they're essential components of any amphibious operation. Targeting them signals Iranian intent to complicate U.S. force projection options in the Gulf region. Kuwait is, of course, a significant hub for U.S. military logistics and operations in the Middle East. The idea that Iranian missiles reached Kuwaiti port infrastructure, if confirmed, would represent a notable geographic expansion of the operational footprint of this campaign. As with all elements of this wave, independent verification is still in progress. The final major claimed element of Wave 92 is perhaps the one with the clearest strategic logic, given everything we've covered in recent videos on this channel: a drone strike in Bahrain that reportedly destroyed a long-range air surveillance radar. We've talked at length in previous breakdowns about Iran's apparent strategy of targeting radar and sensor infrastructure as a priority. The destruction of the AN/FPS-132 in Qatar, the two AN/TPY-2 THAAD radars in Jordan and the UAE. This is a pattern, not a coincidence. A long-range air surveillance radar in Bahrain would serve a critical function in the U.S. military's regional sensor network. Bahrain hosts the U.S. Naval Forces Central Command. It's the headquarters for American naval operations across the entire Middle East region. Any degradation of air surveillance capability there has implications not just for missile defense, but for broader situational awareness across the Gulf. A drone strike rather than a ballistic missile strike is also notable here. Drones are slower and lower cost than ballistic missiles, but they can be more precise and harder to detect at low altitudes under certain conditions. Using a drone for this specific target, a radar installation, rather than a ballistic missile suggests deliberate platform selection based on the nature of the target and the operational environment. So stepping back from the individual target claims, what does Wave 92 tell us about where this conflict is heading? A few things stand out. Number one, the geographic expansion continues. Each successive wave of Operation True Promise 4 has demonstrated Iran's willingness and apparent capability to strike targets across a wider and wider area. From Israel to Jordan to the UAE to Qatar to Kuwait to Bahrain, the operational reach being claimed and in many cases confirmed is genuinely significant. Number two, the sensor degradation campaign is ongoing. The Bahrain radar strike fits a clear and consistent pattern. Iran appears to be systematically targeting the eyes and ears of U.S. and allied air defense networks across the region. Every radar destroyed makes subsequent missile strikes harder to detect, harder to intercept, and more likely to reach their targets. This is sophisticated, sequenced operational thinking, not opportunistic targeting. Number three, the use of cluster munitions, if confirmed, will intensify international scrutiny. Whatever one's position on this conflict, the use of area effect munitions in or near populated areas carries legal and humanitarian implications that will be debated intensely in coming days. Number four, the verification gap remains a major factor. Iran's claims and independently verified outcomes are not always the same thing. Some strikes have been confirmed in full, others partially, and some remain contested. It's important to hold the distinction between what has been claimed and what has been confirmed, and we've tried to do that consistently throughout this video. Here's where we are. Wave 92 of Operation True Promise 4 represents one of the most geographically expansive and tactically diverse single operational announcements of this entire conflict. 4 target areas, multiple weapon types, ballistic missiles, cluster warheads, drones, targets ranging from Air Force bases and naval vessels to radar installations in urban areas. Whether every element of this wave achieves its claimed effects remains to be seen. Verification takes time. Some claims will hold up, others may not. But what can be said with confidence is this: the operational tempo, the targeting logic, and the geographic reach of this campaign are all moving in one direction. The conflict is not de-escalating. The targeting of U.S. assets continues. The sensor network that underpins American and Israeli missile defense in the region is being systematically eroded, one radar at a time. The decisions made in the coming days, by Washington, by Tel Aviv, by Tehran, and by the governments of every country now finding their territory in the crosshairs of this conflict, will determine whether this remains a contained regional escalation or becomes something considerably larger. We'll be covering every development as it comes. If this breakdown was useful to you, share it, because this is exactly the kind of story that deserves more serious attention than it's getting. Stay informed. We'll see you in the next one.